Welcome back, creepy crew. If you're new here, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss any of our spine-chilling content. Today, we've got a compilation of the creepiest ghost stories from TikTok that will send shivers down your spine. Let's dive into the paranormal.
Tell me a ghost story that sounds completely unbelievable but is entirely true. I'll go first.
I had to hop on this trend because I could literally make a whole entire series about all the experiences I have had growing up, especially in the house that I grew up in. But I'll start with one really creepy story that literally gave me chills and still freaks me out to this day. When I was younger, my family had Korean exchange students that lived in our house, and one of the students shared a room with me, so we had a bunk bed, and she took the bottom and I took the top. And during this time, my dad had removed all of the doors to all the rooms in our basement because we were getting new carpet. And so I wanted a little bit more privacy. For Christmas, my grandma gifted me some door beads, but they didn't come to the floor all the way. They were about a foot off of the floor. And my sister Callie would always come in and just steal my clothes, my makeup, whatever she wanted to use. And I was a pretty light sleeper, so she would slide under the door beads to come in the morning before school and to not wake me up. There was one particular night where my exchange student was visiting her uncle in another state for Thanksgiving. I was alone in my room. It was nighttime, everybody was in bed, and it was dark, and I heard my door beads. I looked over and I see what looks like my sister, just like her silhouette, and she's got long curly hair, and she was crawling on all fours with her hair, and her hair was like hanging in front of her face, and she was crawling on all fours, sliding under the door beads, and I could see the door beads sliding against her back as she slid under. And once she got under, she like hurried to the end of my bed where the closet was at the foot of my bed. I was thinking to myself, like, oh, I caught her in the act this time. I'm gonna totally tell her that I knew she was stealing my clothes. I snuck to the edge, to the end of the bunk bed, and I just tried to scare her. And when I looked over the end of my bed, there was nobody there. I just started screaming, and then my sister ended up running down the hall, and she came in and turned on my light, and she's like, what? And I was just like, and I just freaked out and told her what had happened. But that was one time that was super, super creepy.
I really think this might be the scariest account.
I'm so fucking scared right now. It's currently 1 a.m. and my boyfriend is at work. It's just me and my son. And hold on. I just heard keys. I just heard keys open my door. So I'm thinking he might have come home early. He don't supposed to get off till the morning. So I hear movement, I hear jiggling, I hear keys, and I hear movement in the living room. Now my son's room is across from our room, and we have motion lights in there for him, so when he wake up at night, in case he crawl out the bed. I'm about to show y'all. Completely dark. You have to step in his room to activate the motion light, right? There's 2 of them. Which, if I cut off my bathroom light, I can see that light on from my room, right? Ooh, y'all. So, I'm thinking he went in there to check on the baby because he do that. He always come in the house no matter what time it is, and he check on him first. So, hold baby. After a good, maybe like 5 minutes, I don't hear him moving no more. So I'm like, damn, is he gonna come in the room? Like, you know, like me and the baby in the room. I know he didn't see the baby was in his bed because I got him out and I put him in the bed with me because sometimes I don't like sleeping by myself. This apartment is kind of weird. We just moved here a few months ago and it's just always been like little shit. Like, that's another story though. But so I fucking get up. I get up and I go out here. There ain't nobody here, y'all. There's nobody here. There's nobody here. I turned all the lights. I'm walking around the house. There's nobody fucking here. How can motion lights come on without motion? I heard keys. I heard movement in my living room. Yeah, I'm not crazy. Like, I heard that shit. Clear as day. Clear as fucking day. Not a dream. And there's nobody fucking here but me and my son. Oh my God.
Tell me a ghost story that sounds completely unbelievable but is entirely true.
It's finally time to tell my story. So when I was an undergrad, somewhere around like 2011, 2012, I went to CarMax, bought my first big girl purchase by myself, no co-signer, you know. It was a used car. It was a 2009 Jeep Compass, and I loved that little thing. So I spent all day at the dealership, and it was late at night. I had to drive back to my dorm, so that was like an hour away, right? By the time I get to the free parking lot, it's already dark outside. I reach in the back seat to grab my backpack, and guess what's staring at me? It was a little Asian girl. Scared the shit out of me. I grabbed my stuff so fast, I darted to my dorm room, closed the door, and when I tell you I was huffing and puffing and super scared, because what did I just see? I know I did not see what I know I saw on day one. So the very next day I called my grandmother. This is very important because my grandma is Chinese and Jamaican. Not to mention she's a medium. She sees spirits and she talks to people all the time. So I'm just like, she gotta have something to do with her because those are her people. So I asked my grandma, has anybody in our family lost a little Asian girl like that was like 3 or 4 years old? She says, no, doesn't sound familiar. Why, what's up? So I tell her what I saw in the car and she says, oh, no, she's there to protect you. It's fine. Winter's approaching. I've been walking to work this whole time. Bought a car, hadn't even drove it because I'm scared. Eventually, I talked myself into, okay, just drive during the daytime, maybe talk to her, see if you can get anything out of her. So for a couple months, I tried talking to her, got nothing, no response. She would just stare. She would just sit and look at me. Eventually, I guess I just kind of warmed up to her, like she's just gonna be here. Like I don't know what to do. Like this is still my car. And anytime I would have people in the car, she would just disappear. Like she knew what her role was. Fast forward, and this girl has now been riding in my car for almost 5 years. Still doesn't talk. At this point, I'm in grad school at the Med Center. I'm dirt broke, I'm working multiple jobs, and I'm driving for Uber and Lyft on the side, right? The last time I saw her was when I was getting ready to go out to go drive. That night, I got a ride request to go pick up somebody from the casino. Turns out it was my classmate from the Med Center. So we're chopping it up in the car, right? I come across this intersection. It's a 4-way intersection, and at the red light, there was an officer sitting there just waiting at his red light. I remember just kind of glancing down, making sure that I was going the right speed limit, and boom, I got hit. It was a big black Suburban. The guy was drunk. And he kept driving after he hit my car, and the only reason why he stopped is because he hit a tree. The officer saw everything happen. It was all caught on the dash camera. I'm gonna just be real with you. That night, should have been dead, okay? He ripped the whole front end of my Jeep off. It was to smithereens. There was nothing. There was like, I can't even explain. Airbags had deployed. I'd never been in a car accident before, so I didn't know airbags were white. I thought I was in heaven. And I remember being so angry because everybody said when you die, you're so peaceful. I was angry. I was a telephone operator. I was working like 2 and 3 jobs. I was putting myself to grad school, and I was miserable. And I was just like, God, this is how you gonna do me? Eventually, I come to it because now I hear the girl in the back seat of my car screaming, Larissa, we gotta get you out. Larissa, we gotta get you out. I was like, oh shit, I'm not dead. Okay. When I stepped out of my car, my shoe was across the street. When I tell you I got hit so bad, my car spun across 3 different lanes. The whole front end of my car was missing. Gone. Smithereen, just smoke. Obviously, the officer runs him down. And then his girlfriend gets out the car. You get off my man. He didn't do nothing to me. You get off my man. And I just remember sitting on the curb like, what just happened? So we start the lawsuit process. Fast forward. About a year later, it's my birthday. Me and my best friend are going to go to the spoken poetry word slam thingamajig. just because I just wanted to get out the house. You know what I mean? And out of the corner of my eye, I see this guy sitting at a table, and I am so intrigued because I just want to know, what is he doing? He's got like tarot cards. So best friend was like, go talk to him, like go get a reading. I said, no. You don't understand. My people are Jamaican. We don't do. I'm not disturbing nothing. Plus, I already know what I know that I don't tell people. So I did this reading with her right by my side because I'm a little nervous. So I sit at this guy's table. He has me hold out my hands. He puts all these little animal bones and trinkets and stuff, and he says, let the pieces fall where they may fall. And he said, by the way, happy birthday. I said, what? How did he know it was my birthday? Oh, I see what you're doing there. I see what you're doing there. It takes a while to evaluate the pieces, and he goes, so there's a lot here I want to talk to you about, but the first thing I need to ask you is, tell me about your car accident. I said, got hit by a drunk driver like a year ago. Yeah, okay, what? He says, no, tell me what really happened. I never told anybody about this. I never told anybody about this. What do you mean? To the best of my knowledge, I'm trying to remember exactly everything. And I tell him I got hit by a drunk driver. He was going pretty fast. T-boned my car, but it only hit the front end of my car. I don't know how it didn't hit me. And he said, so what about the little girl that's in the car? I said, I'm playing dumb. Why am I playing dumb? He knows this stuff. He clearly does. I don't know this man. I've never met him. So I tell him, yeah, okay, there's a little girl that's been in my car for, a couple of years or whatever. He said, do you know that she turned the wheel for you? I said, what are you talking about? He said she cut the wheel to save your life because she died in that car and she didn't want you to die. He's right. That was the last time I saw her. I asked him, can you give me more information? Who is she? Why was she here? Is she in my family? There was really no other information. She's not related to me at all. She just didn't want to see me die in that car. But during that reading, he did ask me some other questions and stuff, but he told me, you're a medium and I need you to start acting like it. For the sake of not sounding crazy, I've never told anybody else outside of my mom and my grandma and my family that I be seeing shit, but I don't be saying shit. Nothing it's just normal. But I know that you don't talk about that stuff out loud because it freaks out people. How did he know this? I don't know. He said, you have abilities that can put me out of business, and I need you to really lean into that. Well, he's right. I am a medium, and I'm not that great at it. I'm honestly scared about everything, and I do not trust being in the dark. Side note, I've never had anything evil or wicked happen to me. I've always felt protected. I still feel protected. But if you want to hear another story about how I saved my dad's life by telling him he has cancer, let me know.
Okay, now you can start telling it.
My daddy told us about that time him and his first cousin went hunting. And they had killed a coon, a possum, and tied him up where he couldn't get out. And they was going through a cemetery on their horse.
I thought this happened in the cemetery.
Well, it might have was in the cemetery, but I forgot. But anyway, the important thing is when they got home and untied the sack still tied up, no hole in it. Opened up the sack, nothing wasn't in the sack, nothing.
What did he say? What did Grandpa Junior say?
They didn't know what to say, except it must was a haint.
And tell the folks what a haint is.
I don't know myself what no haint is. I don't want to know.
You know what they call a haint, Mom?
A ghost?
Ain't that what y'all call a ghost, a haint?
I guess so. I don't want to know. I don't like talking about no haints and ghosts. Their daddy used to tell them all kind of stories before they go to bed. And he was telling them a story about the man said, who darkened that door? And that would scare them to death. She said they would be scared to go in the kitchen and get a drink of water. Who darkened that door?
Well, they would find out who darkened the door?
No, because they get in the bed and cover up.
Okay, now you can start telling it.
Tell me a ghost story that sounds completely unbelievable but is entirely true. I'll go.
So I have a little story. This was a few years ago, I would say before COVID, maybe 2018, 2019. I wanted to get a little vanity mirror because I've been seeing them all over social media, and also I wanted to improve better on my makeup, so I needed a little mirror so I could really look into the details. So this one day, me, my dad, and my sister, we went out to the flea market or the swap meet in my local area, and I came across this old lady who was selling like really vintage stuff, and I saw that she had a little pink vanity mirror, and it had like those little lights on the side, so I thought it was perfect. I was like, wow, like this is so cute, I really would like to buy it. The lady says, oh yeah, that's such a great option, but just so you know, it is built from the 1950s. That's where I should have like booked it, you know? But instead I purchased it and I took it home with me. I show my dad the mirror and I'm like, oh dad, like isn't this mirror so cute? And he tells me, yeah, it is really cute. Let's just hope it's not haunted. Warning sign number 2. Maybe I should have never purchased it. But it was already too late. I already handed the lady the money. We were already on our way home. It was fine. Whatever happened, happened. I was really hoping it wasn't haunted, but boy, was I proven wrong. So once we got home, everyone settled down, dropping off all their bags. I went into my room and I started to redecorate my closet. But before I did that, I put on music. So I had this little tiny speaker. I don't have it anymore because it broke down. But I had this little speaker and I put it in my closet. My closet is on the other side of the room, over here. And this is the exit door. So as I was like going on about my day, I started to move a couple things around my room. And then at some point, my dad and my sister, they came over to like ask me a few questions about, I don't know what it was, but it was just a small conversation. And both of them leave. They leave into the kitchen and they start talking. And I'm like, you know what? I think I'm gonna go ahead and hang out with them for a little bit, just give myself a little bit of break from all this cleaning. So I start to exit out of my room, right? All of a sudden, I hear this loud crash. And I was like, okay, I was the last one here. Let me go ahead and check what fell. Because at first I thought maybe some of the things that I moved around fell. I was specifically looking at this one umbrella that I had, but it was standing right up. It was still where I left it. So I was like, okay, that's kind of interesting because everything else is like they're in boxes and stuff. Like they wouldn't fall. So I couldn't find anything. I was really confused. So I started to leave my room again. But before I could officially like exit the door, I noticed that the music sounded different. It sounded muffled. So I look around. All of a sudden, I see the speaker in the center towards the exit of the room. And I'm like, using physics, using science, trying to find an explanation as to how the fuck the speaker from the other side of the room went all the way to the other side of the room when nobody touched it. So I was really confused. I was really concerned. And I was like, whoa, hold on, like, no way. So I go over to my dad and I'm like, Dad, like, I played this music on the speaker. All of a sudden it's on the floor, but like in the center of the room. I don't know what happened. I didn't touch it. Nothing happened. Like there wasn't even like an earthquake or anything to make it fall, especially that far. So I was really confused. And my dad was also kind of confused because he's like, what? Like, how did that happen? But he also asked me, he's like, are you sure you didn't do anything? You didn't touch it? You didn't like throw something? Like nothing? And I was like, no, nothing. I was literally exiting the room. I don't understand why that happened. So my dad, he was like, you know what? Don't worry about it. Just keep doing what you're doing. And I was kind of spooked because I was the last one in the room when that happened. So I asked my little sister, I was like, hey, like, can you stay with me as I organize my closet? And he's like, yeah, sure thing. So my little sister is helping me out on the side. I put the speaker back. My dad, he's actually helping me hang up this mirror, this other mirror that we had, but we've had it for a really long time. Nothing spooky ever happened with that mirror. He hangs it up on the wall and he even like tugs it, he balances it out, he makes sure that it's secure, right? That it's in place. My dad starts to leave. Me and my sister, our backs are turned away from my dad and the mirror that he just put up. So all of a sudden, again, we hear this loud crash. The mirror that he just secured fell off on top of the table where I had my makeup and everything, all the way down to the floor. So it was a huge crash that I jumped up and I screamed. My sister immediately turned around. My dad came rushing in, and we all just stare at that. And we're like, what the fuck? So we all stare at it, and we're like, what? My dad, he asked me and my sister, did you guys get near it? No. Did you guys throw something? No. Did you guys do anything? No. Me and my sister were standing where we were standing, and we didn't move because we were scared. My dad was kind of annoyed at this point, but not at us, but just at the weird things that are happening. Because before this incident, nothing happened like this before. So we start to clean up the table, we start to clean up the things that fell, and we noticed the vanity mirror was there. My dad says, you know what? Ever since we got that mirror, weird stuff started happening. And I told him, you know what, Dad? You're absolutely right. So we had to get rid of it because it was too much energy that caused physical things to move. And the crazy thing is that before we got the mirror, nothing happened. So the minute we got rid of it, everything stopped. And ever since then, nothing like that has ever occurred in my house, which I'm really grateful for, but scared as fuck.
Tell me a ghost story that sounds completely unbelievable but is entirely true.
Okay, so basically for the first 18 years of my life, I lived with some kind of like demon, evil entity thing. I don't know. All I know is that when he first appeared, when I was like 6 years old in my dreams, he would come to me like every night, every other night. He came to me for a while, and he would like make me kill a bunch of people in my dreams, or else he was gonna torture them for eternity. It was weird. But at the end of every single dream, he'd be like, okay, well, I'll see you like tomorrow night, but remember, don't tell anybody about this. And I'd just be like, okay. And then finally, at one point, I decided I should tell a trusted adult about this. And so I went into the kitchen where my mother was, and I was like, hey, Mom, I need to tell you about this dream. It's terrifying. And she was like, okay. And then as I started to tell her about the dream, the thing like appeared in the kitchen, and it was the first time I had ever seen him like while I was awake. Basically, he was just this like shadow thing with red eyes. I don't fucking know. And so he like appeared in the kitchen, broad daylight, like, and started running towards me. And so I stopped talking about it and was like, never mind. And then he disappeared, and I was like, okay, that's weird. And so then I went to school, and I was talking to one of my friends. I was like, let me try this again. And so I was like, hey, do you want to hear about my dream last night? And they were like, oh, okay. And so then I started telling her, and then boom, he appears on the other side of the playground, starts running towards me, and I was like, oop, never mind. And he disappears. And then he never showed up in my dreams again after that. I guess he got mad at me for trying to tell people. I don't know. But anyways, I kind of forgot that he existed, because like I would occasionally feel him come in and just like stand in my corner of my room and just stare at me, and I'd just be like, leave me alone, please. But that's fine. And then I just kind of forgot that he existed because, like, you know, my mom died. I was going through like medical issues, and there was trauma, and there was a bunch of other stuff going on. So I forgot he existed. And then we finally got dogs when I was in high school, and our tiny little Yorkie, we were chilling on the bed, and she loves meeting new people. Not that this thing is a people, but anyway, she loves it. And finally she's sitting in my room, and then I guess the thing walked in and went to his corner where he would hang out and just watch me. And so the thing was like, she was sitting on my bed. The dog was sitting on my bed, and the thing walks in, and she like perks her head up, looks at the door, watches it, follows it to like the corner where it would stand at, and she like gets up and she's like shaking her little tail, and she's so excited, and she like goes over and tries to like sniff it and play with it. And I was like, oh fuck, I forgot about this thing that lives here. And then we got a big dog, and that big dog had a very different reaction to this thing coming into my room, because big old dog Abby was sitting on the bed. And I guess the thing walked in, and, you know, little Gigi's like, oh my god, that thing is here, let me go play with it. And I was like, you're fucking weird. And the big dog immediately jumped down off the bed, got into a defensive position, hackles up, growling, showing teeth, like starts barking at this thing, and Gigi was like, what are you doing? Like, this is our buddy. And I was like, good God. And so I just, like, we left the room, and I took them for a walk, and I was like, we're just gonna leave. By the time we got back, I guess it had fucked off to wherever it fucks off to when it's not staring at me. And then another thing that happened was my sister was home sick from school one day, and our rooms were right next to each other, and she was completely by herself, and she heard this crash in my room, like something had fallen over, and then she heard somebody sprint out of my room. And so she like went to go check and was like, Carter, you here? And I was not there. I was at school. You were homesick, alone, dummy. And so she like went in. Nothing had fallen in my room. Nothing had been knocked over. And so she was just like, oh, that's fantastic. And then finally, I went off to college. I was 18 and I left. And I guess this pissed this thing off, because I'm driving home one day, the February of my freshman year, and I get a call, and they're just like, hey, yo, the house is on fire. So see you in a couple hours. And I was like, oh, house is on fire. Okay. And so I get home, and the garage and the attic had completely burned down. The rest of the house was fine, but it had been completely like smoke and water damage. So we were not going to be living there anymore. I don't 100% know that they found the cause of the fire. I don't know. But yeah, whenever I walked into the house, I was like expecting it to just feel like my house, which typically felt like something was sitting on my chest and I couldn't breathe. Like that house just made me feel so ugh. And I thought it was because of like all the grief and trauma that house was associated with, which was probably also part of it. But when I tell you, after this fire, I walked in and it felt so light and airy in there. Like there was no evil, gross presence in there anymore. And I was just like, oh my God, guys, let's live here. This place is fantastic. This is a great aura. And my dad was like, it caught on fire. We can't live here anymore. And I was like, understandable. So yeah, anytime we visited after that, when they were doing renovations and we were selling it and stuff, like it felt so light and airy. It was amazing. But yeah, I haven't seen the thing since. I've encountered other ghosts at other places I've lived at, just little visitors and stuff. My mom came to me before she died and was just like, goodbye, and then like walked into a light or something and was like, I love you, it's okay. And I was like, okay. But yeah, no, that was the thing I grew up with. That was entirely too long of an explanation. So if you watch this whole thing, good job. I'm okay.
Me a ghost story that sounds completely unbelievable but is entirely true.
So I guess I have another ghost story since everybody's liking them so much. Start off, I am no stranger to spirit ghosts, seeing things, whatever you want to call them. So this particular story, it just relates to my grandmother. We were at my aunt's house. Now, backstory, my aunt now lives over my grandfather, which is my grandmother's husband. After she passed, we moved him into an apartment, and my aunt stays over him, which is above him. So my grandfather doesn't like a lot of noise, doesn't like a lot of bumping, and anybody that stayed in the apartment knows what it sounds like when people are doing too much above you. So my grandfather doesn't like that, you know. So every so often, and it was if my aunt was there, he would kind of hit his cane on the top of the ceiling and bump us and let us know, hey, you know, be quiet. So that was our cue, and we know that, hey, we making too much noise, we need to be quiet. So, but when my aunt was not home, he wouldn't do that. So my aunt left. It was me and my cousin. We were all having fun, you know. We turned the music up. We had our own little semi-party inside of the house with just us, okay. So it's maybe 9. It's nighttime because my aunt, she's gone out with her friends. So we're having fun. We got the music loud, and all of a sudden, and at this time I'm still communicating. Me and my grandmother is still communicating. We're talking. We're, you know, have our own little thing going on. So if you're confused, go back and watch my last videos, then you'll kind of know. But this particular day, we were partying, kicking it, had the music up, had our own little party going on with just us, and the doorbell rings. So when the doorbell rings, we think nothing of it. We stop, We turn the music down and we go and answer. Now, when we get to the door, open the door wide, there's nobody there. You have to walk 2 apartments down before you get to the stairs to go down stairs of the apartment, you know. So there's nobody there. And we stay at the apartment on the end, so you can't walk to the right. You can only walk to the left. So imagine this. So we see nobody downstairs. Think nothing of it. Close the door. Now the first time it happened, close the door. Not paying no attention. Turn our music back up. We continue what we were doing. Maybe after 5 minutes of listening to the music, ding dong, the doorbell rings again. So we're like, okay, turn the music down. Every time the doorbell rings, keep in mind, we turn the music off. Okay, so doorbell rings, second time, we turn the music down, we turn it off, and we go to the door, open the door. Now, granted, as kids, we are not knowing what we know now as adults. You know, adults, doorbell ring, you're going to look through the door. If nobody's there, you're not going to open the door. Think none of it. So we're opening the door. Nobody's out there. Can't see anybody. Nobody's walking down the steps. Just like the doorbell just rung out of nowhere. So this is the second time. I'm big on 3 strikes. Okay, so this is the second time. Okay, so now I am on alert. My antennas are standing up, and I'm like, what the hell is going on? Okay, my cousin, she's going on about her business like nobody's at the door. Me, because I'm so into this world that I'm in, and I have so much going on in my personal world that people don't know, and they think that it's rude. I mean, not rude. They think that it's weird. So, second doorbell, I'm on alert. I'm like, okay, what the fuck is going on? Like, what is going on? So, we turn the music back up. We start back partying, but I am on alert. Like, I am looking around. I am actually waiting on this doorbell to ring again. So, lo and behold, the doorbell rings again. And this time, I'm standing right at the door because I'm on alert. My cousin turns the music down. I swing the door open. I'm like, what is going on? And nobody's there. Nobody is there. Pitch black dark. Nobody rung the door. So at this moment, I'm like, fuck the music. We're not turning the music back on. We're just gonna sit here. We're gonna have like a woosah coming to Jesus moment. Let's sit down in a circle. Let's communicate. Let's figure out what is going on. Why this doorbell keep ringing? Am I the only one? Like, what is? It's not normal. So I don't turn the music back up. The night is over. Our party is over. Okay, we're done for. We're gonna watch TV. We're gonna sit down. We're gonna have a self-evaluation is what we're gonna do for the rest of the night because we don't know what's going on. When my aunt comes home, we let her know what went on, what's going on, and it took her to make me realize that was my grandmother, because every time we rung the doorbell, we would turn the music off. So as long as we didn't have the music up loud, interrupting her husband because it's 9 and 10 o'clock at night and he's trying to get some sleep. But of course, he's not going to bam his cane up there because when my aunt's not at home, he's like, those kids are not going to listen to anybody. They're going to keep making noise. So he would just ignore it. So my grandmother was like, my man is trying to sleep. Turn this down and turn it down now. Needless to say, she did not play about him in life or afterlife. Okay, so we did not turn the music back on. Our party was over. We waited on our aunt to come home to then let us know what really happened. But that's another one of my ghost stories. If you want to hear more, just let me know. If you have some ghost stories, send them to me, and I don't mind telling them.
Tell me, what's the creepiest experience you ever had in your life and why you still think about them?
So, I come from a huge family and we used to get together a lot. And on one particular occasion, it was storming outside. And when it used to storm, we used to sing like a lot of gospel music or whatever. Like my parents were like heavy into the church. My dad was basically like a quartet gospel singer. Although we were from Arkansas, we had migrated up to the Midwest, and I was living in Illinois at the time. But anyway, one time it was storming. We were all in the back, this one room, like one of the main family rooms or whatever. And we were singing like gospel music, like, It's Gonna Rain and all that kind of stuff, like traditional gospel music, old time gospel. And I was staring outside of the window right next to my oldest sister, who's passed on now, R.I.P. Jane. And while we were staring outside the window, and when it was raining, we saw a woman walk out of the ground, take 5 steps, and then disappear. I can still remember what she was wearing. She was wearing a plaid jacket, a hat, and some clothes or whatever. She was shivering cold, but she was trying to, just walk and cover like this. Like if you ever seen an old lady that was cold and she was walking and trying to keep her jacket closed. But that's what we saw. And my sister and I looked at each other, and I said, "Did you see that?" And my oldest sister at the time, she said, "Don't you ever say anything else about this again. Don't ever mention it or whatever." And for years, until she died, I used to say, "Jane, do you remember that time? I don't want to talk about it." Was before I can get it out of my mind, get it out of my mouth. She would stop me every time, but that's what it was. It was just a woman who walked out of the ground, took 5 or 6 steps, and disappeared right in front of our eyes. It was the weirdest thing and the craziest thing I've ever saw, and I'll never forget it.
So my grandma told me about this husband and wife that spent all their time sitting up on this porch all the time, all day, all night. Now, I revealed in a video previous to this one that what they had in the house was the devil. They said that they had captured the devil and had him stuck up in the house using some kind of prayer or some kind of special prayer or something like that. So these folks sat on the porch all day, all night just to make sure he didn't get out. They kept a little strap and stuff on the ground and all that. So when my grandma and them snuck there one night to look around and see what they could see, they looked through and they seen they had bars and stuff and all that on the outside, and the doors was locked and all that from the outside. So my grandma had an older sister, and she was real just in your face and always, that was one of my favorite aunties, man. Said whatever came to her mind. So she said, "I'm gonna talk to them folk. That's it. I ain't playing no more. I'm gonna go up there and say something to them." So she ran up on them one day. They were coming home or whatever, going to school. I think they was coming home from school, she said. And she came up on them and said, excuse me, sir, excuse me, ma'am. I don't mean to be rude, but I want to ask y'all, how come y'all never leave up off y'all porch?" So the folk just kept staring, and not really staring at her, but like staring through her. It was like they saw she was there right in front of them, but they was looking her way, but past her. So she got real smart with him and said, "I know you got somebody trapped in there. Who is it?" And she said, when she said that, the guy looked up and the lady looked down. And when that happened, the sky got dark, like a cloud or something. Big old thick cloud got up in front of the sun, and it got real dark outside. So finally the guy went on and spoke to her, and he said, after the Civil War, it was an old black woman who had lost all of her sons and her husband and everybody. So she put a curse up on the land. And she said that the devil will roam free all through the Delta. Until one day, we finally cornered him in this house. And we locked him up. And we're hoping that if we keep him locked up long enough, maybe he can go on about his business. And the Delta can flourish again. But the Delta ain't never been nothing all since this devil been walking on up through yonder.
Me a ghost story that sounds completely unbelievable but is entirely true.
A couple of years ago, my mum asked me to stay at her house to look after her dogs. So I agreed. I rang my friend and was like, "Come over, stay with me, we'll chill, we'll look after the dogs, and then we'll go and do something the next day." That night, we'll get into bed and my friend feels something touch her shoulder. I go straight into gaslight mode because I'm like, "Look, Nothing's touched your shoulder. You're just being silly, forget about it. The main reason I did that was because I didn't want her to be scared. I didn't want to be scared. I didn't live at my mum's and I just wasn't feeling that energy. I didn't want to be involved in it. That night I had the most bizarre dream. I had a dream that I got dragged down the stairs of a 7-foot shadow, and my friend who was staying with me that night was stood at the top of the stairs watching me. Once it dragged me to the bottom of the stairs, it stood up and it must have been over 7 foot tall. 8 foot, 9 foot, easily. Black shadow. It terrified the life out of me. I bolted up the stairs. I grabbed my friend, I got in bed. The next day I woke up and I was debating in telling my friend, and I thought I best not because she was scared the night before, so I'll just leave that dream out. I went to uni. My friend had a baby, we lost contact. Once I come back, it was around Christmas time, my friend was like, do you want to meet up, do you want to catch up? I'm like, sure. I go round to her house, we have a couple of drinks, and this night comes into question. She asked me, do I remember somebody touching her shoulder that night, or something? And I was like, yes, I do. I said, and funnily enough, I had the most bizarre dream. And I went on to tell her about this dream. As I was telling her about this dream, the colour literally drained from her face. And I looked at her like, what's up with you? And she said, Jordan, let me stop you there. I had the same dream, but you was being dragged down the stairs and I was stood at the top watching you. She said, once you hit the bottom, this black figure stood up and was 7, 8, 9 foot tall, and you bolted up the stairs, you grabbed me and we went together. To this day, I do not know if that was a dream or if it really happened and we were that traumatized we made ourselves believe it was a dream. I've had a lot of strange things go on in my life, but that by far is the scariest thing.
Would you guys like to hear a story when I was in New Orleans a few years ago? I'm gonna make this quick because I got a Pilates class in 10 minutes. So my ex-wife and I decided to take a trip to New Orleans just to go on a vacation. And keeping in mind, I've never been to New Orleans until that one time. So we booked a hotel at the DoubleTree there. And when we got there, we checked into our hotel room. When I tell you guys, when we got to our hotel room and as soon as we opened that door, my ex-wife and I started feeling this heavy feeling as soon as we stepped through the door. Another thing I want to add, I'm very sensitive to energy, but my ex-wife, she was not very sensitive to energy like that. Like she could go somewhere and be like, I don't feel anything, unless she was just suppressing it or something. But the energy was so heavy in that room, you guys. I told my ex-wife, I was like, look, we can go to a whole nother hotel if you want to. And she was just like, no, it's okay. It's fine. Let's just, it looks really nice. Let's just settle in. So since she wanted to stay, I was like, y'all, I could not take that shit. Like the energy, I'm shaking now talking about it. The energy was so thick, you can literally cut the shit with a knife. So I wasn't taking no chances. I prayed over the walls. I recited the book of Psalms 23. I literally channeled my inner ancestors, like when it came to that room, because I did not play. And the funny thing about it was once I was doing my little prayer work, touching every wall in that room, touching every wall, reciting, my ex-wife was like, I feel a little bit better now, right? So after all of that, we decided to stay. So later that night, y'all, I had to take a deep breath because, shit's about to get real, right? So later that night when we went to bed, I was actually in a state at that moment where I was like between worlds. I believe they call it lucid dreaming. So I was laying in my bed that night and I turned over and looked at one of the corners of the room, and y'all, I saw
like an emaciated looking man or demon or whatever the hell it was, with gray skin, no clothes on, with eyes as red as fire. And the crazy part about it was that in this dream state, I was able to sit up in my bed that night. And when I did, I looked at that thing. I just sat there and just looked at it and stared at it. But the crazy thing about this whole experience was that that entity in the corner of that room did not move. As a matter of fact, that thing was looking at me like it was afraid of me. When I tell you that thing was sitting in the corner of that room like this, I am dead ass serious, y'all. I swear I saw that thing and he was looking like that. He didn't come close to me, or it, or whatever it was. It didn't come close to me or nothing. So when my ex-wife and I woke up that next morning, the room felt lighter. The room felt very light. As a matter of fact, when we went out and did our little festivities, in the French Quarter in New Orleans, we had a good time. We had a blast. And we actually slept peacefully the other 2 nights that we stayed in that room. I don't know what kind of protection my ancestors or my mother have over me, but I will say this. My mother does prayer work like it ain't nothing. Like, she is a prayer warrior. And my mother also told me that my grandfather used to practice, if you know what I mean. And her mother, my grandmother, she told me that her prayers were so strong that they probably literally could raise the dead. But when I tell you guys that these spirits in New Orleans are real, that was my first time going. And I heard all kinds of stuff about New Orleans, but that was a personal experience for me. Please leave in the comments of like these similar experiences that you guys had, because I want to hear, because I've always wanted to tell this story, but I kept it in the back of my head because I didn't think nobody was going to believe me. People probably still don't believe me, but it's real. It's real, y'all.
Tell me, what's the creepiest experience you ever had in your life?
Okay. So, as a nurse, we're in the hospital a lot. We see creepy things, but something that really always sticks out with me happened a long time ago in the emergency room I used to work in. The ER I used to work at, I worked second shift, which was 3 to 11 over there, and it was a Friday night, and it was unusually quiet that night. Anyway, in our emergency room that I worked at, there was a room dedicated just to trauma. Heart attacks or massive trauma that was require a lot of hands-on, doctors, nurses, techs, everybody involved. They went to that room. Well, in that room, we always left the light off unless we were needed in there. That was always a signal. If that light was on, something was going on. So I was headed in there to restock some of the supplies in the room. I had a few extra minutes on my hands and decided to make some use of them. Well, as I was restocking the supplies, I heard a very distinct, clear as a bell whisper shout from behind, and it said my name. Now, a whisper shout is when I was like, "Hey, what are you doing?" That's a whisper shout. Well, as I was restocking, I clearly, distinctly heard somebody whisper, "John." And I didn't think anything of it, so I just turned around and I said, "Hey, anybody call me?" I walked out the room. I looked up and down the hallway. Nobody was there. I walked to the nurse's station. I asked them, I said, "Hey, did anybody call me?" They said, "No, we didn't need anything." And that creeped me out because I clearly heard somebody call my name and wasn't nobody there. Now, this room, just for reference, like I said, when it's a trauma room, a lot of the heart attacks go in there, major stuff. So, that room has seen its fair share of people who shuffled off their mortal coil. I mean, that room is where they spent their last few seconds on this planet. So, yeah, that was my creepiest experience.
Tell me a ghost story that sounds completely unbelievable but is entirely true.
The way that I ran to record this video was so fast. Now, I normally don't make videos. I don't post on TikTok, but this was the one. I was like, girl, this is your time. If there's ever a time, this is the time. You have to tell your story. I have had paranormal stuff happen to me my whole life. Definitely more so as I've gotten older. I've had astral projection, what I would consider astral projection, horrible sleep paralysis, crazy dreams, physical encounters with things for as long as I can remember, up till, currently. The one story that I want to talk about is when I was 18, I was a park aide at Donner Memorial State Park. Now, most of you know the Donner Party, or if you don't, they're pretty researchable. And I worked there as a park aide when I turned 18 during the winter time. Now, my dad was also a ranger there at one point prior to me working there. And it's been kind of in my life, and I grew up there, and it's what the town is known for. So one day when I was working in this museum, I was by myself. I worked by myself a lot, especially during in the winter time. It was very slow. It was snowing outside. I was getting ready to close up, and from the back museum portion, I heard what I can only describe as children giggling. Now, I thought it was weird, but I had been going to the back and then kind of coming back up to the front throughout the day, and I was like, well, maybe somebody came in that I didn't see. It was time for me to close up anyway, so I made my way into the museum to go lock the exit doors in the back and just check and make sure that nobody was in there. As soon as I walked in, the giggling stopped. And in my head, I'm kind of like, well, maybe I'm just freaking myself out. Maybe there wasn't anything, like, it's fine. So I'm making my way through the displays. It's kind of like shaped, it's a big concrete box, no windows. Already creepy in itself. It was built in like the 60s. This thing is old. And it's kind of set, the displays are set up in like a horseshoe shape. So you walk in and then it rounds and then you kind of make your way back out. I'm heading down to lock up the back exit towards the back wall. And as I'm walking, from over my shoulder, one of the displays goes off. Now they're the big you push the button on the wall and it makes the guy talk. And now in my brain, I'm like, that's weird. It's weird. But like, it's old, the button's broke, like, it's fine. I'm like talking myself out of it. I'm like, it's okay, it's fine, everything's fine. Like, don't worry about it, just like lock the door and get the hell out of there. So I kind of write it off. I mean, clue number 2 that I probably shouldn't have been in there, right? But I just keep going. So I go to the exit door, lock the exit door, I'm making my way around the U, and on the back wall, there is this massive, like life-size display of a covered wagon. And then there's a mother and child, like, up at the top. And then there's, like, 2 men down below. Life-size wax mannequins. Creepy. Anyway, I'm walking around this corner, and I'm going around the U. And what I can only describe as like a full body, like chill, like, kind of crawls up my spine. I don't know what possesses me, but I decide to turn around and check it out. So I look over my shoulder. The mannequins that have always been facing left for years, since they put them in, they've always faced left, are now facing right. They are facing the opposite direction, and they are staring at me in my eyeballs. They are from this to this, and now looking directly at me. The way that I panicked, like, my heart, like, I am like feeling like I'm reliving the whole thing again. Like, the panic, I sprinted out of there so fast. She is not a runner, she is not a track star, but I booked it so fast, and I ran and I hid behind a table in the back. Like, there's a back office. I hid under the desk. I called the ranger. I had a ranger come and escort me out of the building because I was so terrified. I cannot convey through the screen how afraid I was. And he comes over, he has to talk me off the ledge. He's like trying to calm me down. And he's telling me, don't worry, like, it does happen to some of us. They like to mess with us sometimes. It's okay. Excuse me, sir? They like to mess with us? Like, shouldn't have somebody told me prior to being hired? Shouldn't have been written in my contract? Like, the spirits, the lingering spirits of the Donner Party, like to mess with the staff. No biggie, it's fine. Anyway, I decide to go home and I decide to talk to my dad about it, because my dad, of all people who has worked there for years, you'd think he would tell his daughter that there were ghosts and spirits or whatever, a presence where she was working, because he hadn't told me before. But anyway, I decided to go tell him. I think he's gonna laugh at me, because I'm a dramatic person, but I think he's gonna laugh at me and brush it off or whatever. He's very straight-laced. He's not normally a spiritual or paranormal person. Oh no, he says, oh yeah, that's happened a couple times. It's kind of creepy. We just don't like to talk about it. I would have liked to talk about I, sir, would have liked to talk about it before I got hired, before I was put in that situation. Anyway, I digress. So, I do want to preface in saying, like, I have the utmost empathy for the Donner Party, that situation, like the whole thing. And I'm not trying to make light of that situation whatsoever. But I will say that it was traumatizing, and it has stuck with me. It stuck with me forever. I still think about it to this day. I still continue to have stuff happen. We had stuff happen there because I also worked there for 3 years, so I just continued to work there. So honestly, that's on me. But like, we had stuff like there was a false door that housed a projector screen for a video that we shot that would just pop open, just squeak, like it would just pop open. The projector would just start playing. The giggles came back, you know. So anyway, it was pretty crazy. And yeah. Anyway, I just felt like, you know, people should know about that. And if you've watched this 7-minute long video, this is why I don't make videos. I can't stop talking, the ADHD. Anyway. But yeah, that's my story. Okay. Bye.
Tell me a ghost story that sounds completely unbelievable but is entirely true. I'll go first. When I was 8.
So I was babysitting for the first time this little girl. She's 3 years old, and it was gonna be at night because her mom works nights. So I'd be with her till like 2 a.m. and her mom told me she's not sleeping lately. I don't know what's going on. She won't go in her room. She won't lay down. Whatever you need to do to get her to sleep, just try. I said, all right, we'll figure it out. So it was late, and there was no sign of her wanting to go in her room. I said, let's go lay down in your room. You know, it was 11. I think 11:30. So let's go lay down in your room. She goes, no. I said, why? And she goes, the baby's crying. And I said, I have no idea. You know, I didn't think anything of it. I thought maybe it was like a TV show she was talking about. And I said, no, let's go lay down in your room. So we went in her room, and she goes, the baby's crying. And so at this point, I'm like, what baby? What baby? And she pointed up to the ceiling, at the corner of the ceiling, and she said, right there. He's crying. He's sad. She said, I don't want him to cry. And I was like, I am freaked out. So, first thing that happened. And I said, okay, let's leave. Let's go to your mom's room. So we went to her mom's room. And she said, the tall man's in here. And I full body goosebumps. I said, what tall man? Where? And she pointed to her closet, and she goes, he lives there. Tall man. And I said, we're not staying in here. We're going into the living room. So we sat down in the living room, and there's a couch. Behind me is a big window. So I think I had the news on. I don't know what I was watching. She's sitting there, and she stood up and looked behind me and screamed. She screamed, and I was so like, I like thought someone was outside. So I looked. I swear to God, I saw the tallest shadow. It was like a shadow figure, tall, and it looked like it just swooped past the window, and it looked like he was wearing a wide brimmed hat. And I was so freaked out, and she said Hat Man as soon as it happened. Hat Man, Hat Man, Hat. And my instinct is to run outside, but I didn't run outside. And so I honestly think I just stayed in the kitchen. I was like in the kitchen, and I was like, your mom's gonna be home soon. I'm just gonna stay here, okay? And the mom got home, and I was like, yeah, she's not sleeping. I gotta go. I was so scared. So scared. I never went back. They never asked me to come back. I never went back, and they moved shortly after. We lost contact, so I don't know how they're doing. I hope they're okay. But that was the scariest thing that ever happened to me. Talking about it now gives me tears in my eyes because it just freaks me out so bad.
Tell me, what's the creepiest experience you ever had in your life and why you still think about them?
I have told this story on my page before when there was a trend going around talking about the creepy experiences that we've had with the Raggedy Ann doll. And how not only we would realize that these dolls would be gifted to spiritually inclined little children. And I'm gonna go ahead and tell y'all off the bat, I don't give a fuck how crazy y'all think this sounds. It fucking happened. And I asked my spirit guides and my ancestors about this because they also brought to my attention and reminded me how I even got the Raggedy Ann doll was a woman from my grandmother's church gave this doll to my grandmother to give to me. The bitch even has my name stitched on her stomach in red thread. So anyway, this doll would come the fuck alive. I remember being in the living room, the adults were in the kitchen because she would only do this shit when it was only me and her in the room. Only me and her in the room. She gets up from where she was next to me where I was playing at, runs across the living room in my grandmother's house, past the fireplace, jumps up onto the couch, and is like... And when somebody was about to come into the room, just like in Toy Story, she falls. And I would just be standing there like... I remember one time I was in the office at my grandmother's house and I was doing something, I had my back turned to the door and something made me want to turn around, or I was like at the computer or something, but something made me want to look. And here Raggedy Ann is with her 1 foot tall little self peeping around the door frame, and I'm like, what the fuck? So I get up and I go after her and I look down the hall, put my head out the door, and she's like, like running down the hallway until someone's about to see her, and then she plops her ass down at the end of the hallway. There were instances where I had just seen her in one spot and then just shortly after, she's in a completely different fucking room, and I asked my brother and my cousin, like, did y'all move her or whatever? And they're like, no, we've been doing XYZ, like, we didn't move her. So it wasn't like they were like trying to fuck with me. They have no idea that I'm experiencing this. The cousins and us, we stay at my grandma's house. Me and my other cousin, we're the oldest cousins, we sleep on the pull-out bed. The other two, they sleep in my granddad's, the spare bedroom. Somehow this doll ends up in the bed with us in the pull-out, and she's rubbing my fucking leg. So I kick her across the room. Instances where, again, it's just me and her in the room, and she's like fucking waving at me from across the room. There was a reason that I only kept this doll at my grandma's house. Like, to this day, this doll is still there. At my grandma's house, that's where I kept her.
Tell me a ghost story that sounds completely unbelievable but is entirely true.
This is the third time I'm recording this because I keep reading that drafts do something weird with the audio. I don't know. So for about 10 years, I worked at a very popular gaming retailer. And one morning, I'm on shift, single coverage. It's just me and one other person in the store. The other person in the store is a former associate that had worked at that location when it had originally opened up. I'm behind the counter. He is standing in front of the stockroom door, browsing the wall next to it. One thing you need to know about the stockroom door at this location is that it locks automatically when you close it. Once the door is closed, you cannot open it from the outside without the key. Now, because I am a bundle of neuroticism, I always close that door behind me. I closed that door behind me with such vigilance that I frequently locked myself out of the stockroom because I'd left my keys back there. So I finished checking in a box of product, I pile the product in my arms, and I walk towards the stockroom. The former associate is still standing next to the stockroom door, browsing the wall. As I approach this closed and locked door, it swings open. The former associate looks at me and the door that he also knows was closed and locked and says, "Oh, it's Archie." And I said, "Who is Archie?" So he goes on to tell me that when he originally worked there at that location's opening, some 7 or 8 years prior, on the old point of sale system, every now and then, when a receipt would print out, the associate credited for the transaction was named Archie. The problem with that was that at our location, there were no associates named Archie, nor had there ever been. And as a gag, Archie would sometimes snipe really good transactions, so no other associate in the store could get credit for it. So former associate leaves, I get to spend a few hours being creeped out before the shift change. My manager finally comes in, I tell him about Archie. He tells me he's seen some creepy stuff around the store, but he'd never really chalked it up to anything until now. I clock out for break. I go in the back to eat my lunch. Now on the inside of the stockroom, there's a TV set up to monitor the CCTV cameras set up around the store. Out of habit, anytime I walk out of the stockroom onto the sales floor, I always check the camera to see what I'm getting myself into. My break ends, I stand up, I walk towards the stockroom door, now from the other side, and I look at the CCTV camera TV thing. So there are a number of cameras pointed outside of the stockroom, and then there is one camera pointed into the stockroom. All of the cameras pointed on the sales floor are doing what they are supposed to be doing. However, the camera that is pointed in the stockroom, where I am standing, you know how in horror movies where there's like paranormal interference with electronics and then it gets that like white and gray diagonal like static? That's what was happening on the stockroom camera that was pointed at me. So I am alone in the stockroom staring at this static on the camera that is pointed at me, frozen. I am scared. So I'm running through my head trying to figure out, like, should I run for it? And the moment I think I need to tell my manager, the static stops. I stare at the camera for a few seconds, make sure there's like nothing behind me, and I bolt. I'm gone. I'm not in the stockroom anymore. So I go tell my manager, he comes back to the stockroom with me, we pull up the footage on the camera. The static was in the recording. So we go back and check to see how long it had been going on. From the moment I sat down on my break at the desk in the back until the moment I was standing in the middle of the room staring at it, there was static. In the almost 10 years that I worked at this location, I have never before or since seen any of the CCTV cameras do that. I actually don't think I have seen any electronic ever do that in real life. I thought it was a fake thing made up for movies. But that's the story of how I met Archie, the store ghost from my old job.
Tell me a ghost story that sounds completely unbelievable but is entirely true. I'll go first.
My ex's family lived in one of the oldest and most haunted houses in all of Brisbane. They even have a Wikipedia page dedicated to it. A lot of local newspapers have done roundups of this house being one of the most haunted ones in Brisbane. And we used to stay there quite a bit, but we had a prolonged stay when we moved from Melbourne to Queensland, and we stayed there for about 2 or 3 months. Even before I found out that the house was supposedly haunted, it just gave me the heebie-jeebies in certain rooms. The urban legend has it that it was a sugarcane farmer who owned that house who ended up unaliving himself due to some misfortune, either in the attic of the house or on the tree outside of the house. I don't really remember which. But anyway, the room where I was usually staying at the house was in the attic area. So there was that room, there was another room adjacent to it, and then there was a bathroom. So this whole floor had been remodeled from one big room into all of these separate rooms. The room I usually stayed in was generally pretty fine. It didn't really feel spooky a lot of the time, but the room adjacent to it and the bathroom, those two rooms were super creepy. I had trouble going to the bathroom at night because it freaked me out so badly just to be in the bathroom. I never looked in the mirror because there were so many times where like the toilet was facing this giant wall-long mirror. But I always avoided looking in that mirror because a few times while I was in that bathroom, I could see like shadows moving around the mirror. The other room I stayed in once, the adjacent room, and I remember I was sleeping on the bed and my ex had gotten up and gone downstairs, so he wasn't in the room at the time. But I felt like a weight shift on the bed, and I thought he was like pulling the covers. And then when I turned around, it turned out that there was literally no one in the room. So that was the last time I stayed in that room. There were many times where I was in the basement, letting the dogs out or looking for something in the garage. Every time I went down there, I heard footsteps, rustling, and there was no one there downstairs with me. I did not like being in the basement. But I think the worst part of that house was it was really inconsistent. The vibes were really inconsistent. You would be downstairs in the kitchen or something and you'd be fine. Then you would move to a different room and the vibe would like shift instantly, like something had arrived in the room. I'm getting shivers just talking about it. I stayed there one last time after my ex and I broke up, and I was staying in one of the rooms upstairs alone, and without fail every night I was too terrified to open my eyes. I would just kind of lie in the bed with my eyes closed, and inevitably there'd be like soft footsteps, the louvers would rattle. To be fair, it was a really old house, and you have like the creaks and all of the kind of noises that come with an old house, but some of these were very specific, and especially the heavy vibe shift, like I can't really describe it. It was very pointed in specific rooms. It was a nice house, but I was scared to stay there at night.
Tell me, what's the creepiest experience you ever had in your life?
This is a really long story, so I'm going to just highlight some things and skim over a bunch to get to the nitty-gritty of the story. So a friend of mine had a family friend that she called a cousin move in with her and stayed with her for about a year to help her out with her child and things like that. But over the course of a year, the cousin just became like a nuisance. So fast forward to like I said, a year has passed, and my friend calls me up and is like, hey, you want to hang out? I'm like, fine. I end up like doing a bunch of errands and like ripping and running with her like all day. We end up back at her house at like 9 o'clock. And I'm like, girl, I have to go. And she's like, well, I don't want to be alone. And I'm like, why don't you want to be alone? And she tells me that like a few weeks prior, her cousin in the other room in the middle of the night starts speaking in their native tongue, saying that there's a demon on top of her. Okay. And my friend is so freaked out about what has happened. She grabs her baby and they run and they leave. They don't be like, girl, you okay? No, she just up and left in the middle of the night and went and stayed with her pastor and his family for about a week or so or something like that. The power goes out in the entire neighborhood. I'm like, girl, you and the baby, come on, you come stay with me. We got to get out of here. Other stuff happened, but overall they ended up spending the night with me. And then I didn't hear much about what was going on with that for a minute. Eventually the pastor comes to me and is like, hey, like, I need your help because, my friend has not left his family's home and he believes like maybe this has been blown up out of proportion and that maybe if I came along or whatever and we can go back to the house, we could see that the cousin is left because the cousin doesn't know anybody there. The cousin doesn't have a car. And so we're figuring the cousin is gone. So we drive my cars, meet the pastor and my friend, and we get to her house. Okay. We get in the house and we all like tiptoeing, like so saying the cousin's name, like, hey, you here? And the house doesn't look like anybody has touched a thing in like weeks. So we don't think the cousin is still there. And so my friend is like, I'm just going to get more of my clothes and and the pastor like just looks like defeated, like, please looking at me like, can you help? I don't know how we're supposed to help. And he's telling her to open the bedroom door to see if the cousin is in there. And she's like, I can't do it. And she's trying to pack some more clothes. And he's looking at me and she's like telling the pastor, you open the door. And he's like, I'm a guy, I don't feel comfortable like opening a woman's door. And I'm like, Eventually he's begging, looking at me like, can you please help? And I'm like, fine. So they are in the back, down the hallway, nearest like an exit door, and they like this peeking over, like, okay. And I'm like saying the cousin's name over and over and over. Eventually I open that door and I shut it like in 2 seconds. And they're like, what did you see? And I'm like, let's get out, let's get to the car, and I won't answer.
Tell me a ghost story that sounds completely unbelievable but is entirely true. I'll go.
So I've tried recording this God knows how many times, and for whatever reason the audio is just not working, so we'll try to get through this again. Some background: my mom, my two sisters, and we used to move around a lot when we were younger, and in the year 2008 we moved into our first house. We were renting this house, but since it was our first house, this was a big deal for us because we always lived in apartments. It was a small 2-bedroom, 1-bath, front and backyard house. Pretty much everything started happening as soon as we moved into this house. It would start with small things such as taps, noises in the hallway and in the attic. And those taps would eventually turn into hearing footsteps in the hallway and footsteps in the attic. And then later on it would turn into things being thrown around in our kitchen, and the next morning waking up and finding that our kitchen was a total disaster. I'm sure my mom probably thought that it was one of us in the middle of the night, as we loved to stay up during the night, and one of us made a mess and just didn't clean it before going back to bed. Later on, she would come to realize that that was definitely not the case, as none of us liked being outside of our room in the middle of the night. If any of us had to use the restroom in the middle of the night, we would hold it until the morning. We also did not like having any of the doors to our bedrooms open while we were in there in the middle of the night either. They always had to be closed and locked during the entire night. And this was just so that we wouldn't see anything going on in the hallway, because the hallway was pretty long and pretty scary. There was also an instance where we would come home after being away from the house all day and find bodily fluids in the toilet, which would lead my mom to believe that someone might have been staying in our attic while we were living there. And I don't remember where the entrance to the attic was, but I do know that our attic was pretty much a crawl space, so it would have been very hard for anyone to be living in there. We also had a shed that was in our backyard for our storage. It was very old, very outdated, very dark in there. There was no light. We just used it for storage. But I do remember as a kid, we hung out in there quite often, which is pretty scary thinking about that. And closer to the year 2011, when we finally moved out of that house, we did end up finding out that there was black mold growing in there. My mom and I also did get pretty sick at this house. Could that have been from the mold that was growing in the shed? We have no idea. But all I do know is that whatever that was at that house has followed us to this day. As in a lot of our other places that we lived at, we've experienced lots of things too. So if you guys would like to hear more about that, let me know.
Tell me, what's the creepiest experience you ever had in your life?
Okay, I got one for you, and this is really creepy, and it really fucking happened. Okay, I'm gonna try to talk really fast. So about 4 years ago, I looked up on YouTube how to manifest money, right? And I didn't know anything about manifesting then, and I came across a video, and there was this lady on there, and she was, the caption was like, get anything you want, guaranteed right away, you know, right away. So I clicked on it, and she was talking about this person, or whatever you want to call them, scary as fuck. I didn't know anything about this person prior. So anyways, I'm listening to her video, and she's talking about how to get what you want, and you have to bring like gifts or something. You have to go to a crossroads at like midnight. You have to have 4 pennies in your hand, right? And you're shaking them, and you're chanting something with his name in it. Like I said, I didn't know nothing about the dude prior to that. And I was like, ooh, this is like creepy, you know, whatever. And then, so it was like 3 o'clock in the morning, because I remember looking at the time. Everybody was asleep. I was in bed with my headphones and watching this video. And I was like, dang, it's almost 3 in the morning. I was like, I better go to sleep. And at the time, my piggy bank was right there in my closet. My piggy bank was right there. So I take out my headphones, I turn off my phone, and I'm trying to go to sleep. And in the corner, I hear like change rattling. Like somebody had change in their hand and was like rattling it. Now, like, what the fuck? And I got kind of creeped out. But then I was like, no, your mind's playing tricks on you, and just go to sleep. So I go to sleep and wake up, you know, and I get ready for the day, and I go in the closet and I get down my pair of jeans, pick out my outfit, and then I noticed there was something in my pockets of my jeans, and I was like, what the hell is that? And I go in there and I look and I pull out 4 pennies. 4 pennies! Wasn't she just talking about 4 pennies in the video to give to dude? I don't know, it was crazy and scary as fuck. Because after that, I did some research on who this was, and scary, something you do not mess with, you don't, like, no. So for some reason, I think that he knew I was listening about him or something in my headphones, and he was like in my corner of my closet rattling the change the night before. And I think he put them pennies in my jean pocket or something. I don't know, it's unexplainable, can't explain it, but it was scary as fuck.
Thanks for watching Creepy Crew. If you enjoyed these creepy ghost stories, make sure to comment below and let us know if you're interested in seeing true paranormal documentaries. We'd also love to hear your ideas and suggestions for the channel. Feel free to email us at thecreepycollectivellc@gmail.com. Stay spooky and see you in the next video.